Committee Communications Director, Sean Spicer. Sean, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good Monday morning to you.
So Reince has been your partner, certainly, for some time in the Republican National Committee. What does this mean in terms of Reince leaving the RNC and becoming the Chief of Staff in the White House? How does that change your life and the RNC?
Well, I think the RNC will be just fine. He's had a phenomenal 6-year tenure here. And I think one of the things that, if you think about what he's done here, is he put a plan together 4.5 years ago, how to rebuild the party, how to make very strong up and down the ticket, to make sure that we had the infrastructure and the mechanics down to win. And the result speaks for itself Tuesday night. Not only did we take back that White House, but we maintained our majorities in the House and the Senate. We have 33 governors, the largest amount of secretaries of states and attorney generals. We have the majority of state legislatures. We flipped the Kentucky State House for the first time in 100 years. So this party is strong and vibrant. And while, Reince doesn't deserve, while the party can't take all the credit, I think that we created the data infrastructure in the ground that allowed our voters to come out and for the party to help candidates identify who their people were. So it's great news for President-elect Trump to have someone by his side that knows how to put a plan together, knows how to bring people together, and to execute successfully.
So you think this is going to help get things through quicker? It will be more efficient given Reince's relationships throughout the GOP, now House and Senate controlled?
Yeah, I mean, look, and frankly, it's not just among Republicans. I think if you talk to leading Democrats in Washington and throughout the country, you've gotten to know Reince. He's somebody that gets along well with others, knows how to put a plan together, bring people to a table, even from opposing views, and to be successful and to get us where we're going. So Donald Trump has a very ambitious agenda, and Reince Priebus is the kind of guy that knows how to take that agenda, work with the right parties to make it happen and implement it.
Sean, Harlan Hill here. Were you surprised Tuesday night? In all honesty, I mean, I know that you guys laid down the groundwork for a victory, but were you surprised when you saw the results come in and you saw that it was an electoral college landslide?
A sweep.
A sweep.
Yes, I was surprised by the breadth and the depth of it. I can't lie, Harlan. It was when the counties in key states, whether it was Virginia or Wisconsin or Michigan or even Florida early on, when we saw the margins where we had to do well and where the Democrats weren't doing as well, that was it kept growing hour by hour, minute by minute, where you realized that this wasn't going to be an election that we were going to squeak out, that it was going to be a very, very decisive win and encapsulate a lot of the blue states.
Hey, Sean, it's Kevin Kelly here. Now that Reince has moved on to the White House, when can we actually expect the RNC to come up and fill his shoes? Because there's a lot to be done in January. It's coming up quicker than we think.
That's right. The RNC will meet again in mid-January by rule, at which time a new chairman is elected. Chairman Priebus's term goes through then, and so he will continue to serve. At least that's my expectation until then. And then the committee will meet and choose a new chairman. Largely, historically, the president of the party, the president, if the party's in the White House, makes a suggestion, and the party generally accepts that. So we'll see how it works out, who Mr. Trump would like to suggest, or whether he wants the committee to play a role. But there's still a long time between now and Inauguration Day, and a lot of decisions that have to get made, and so we're kind of letting the process work itself out.
Who are some of those names? Have you guys floated some names to Donald Trump about who could take over the RNC?
No, we're about 8 hours after the first major announcement, so there's plenty of time for additional announcements and policy decisions and priorities to get laid out. So I think we're savoring the win and now the selection of our boss as his partner to Donald Trump. So we're trying to savor as many of these moments as possible before we move on to the next.
One of the, Sean, it's Dagan McDowell, one of the big promises and expectations out of the Trump presidency is big infrastructure spending. If you're a conservative, how do you really feel about that?
Well, I think it's how is what matters. I think we can generally all agree that there's some projects that need to get done. How it gets done is always the devil in the detail, right? So if you ask Democrats, it's always through raising taxes on everyone. I think that how Mr. Trump and Governor Pence put a plan together with Congress to pay for some of these things is where it's going to matter. And I think those are where you're going to see, I think, conservative values come through.
Are you going to follow Reince Priebus to the White House, Sean?
I'm honored to have the job I have now, and will be supportive of Chairman Priebus and Mr. Trump in any way that I can going forward.
So tell me what that looks like in the next 4 years. Let's say you stay at the RNC. I mean, in terms of the RNC and the White House working together, it's interesting that you say it's going to be Trump to make recommendations, perhaps, to say who may run the RNC next.
Well, again, I'm only speaking out of tradition here.
Right, sure.
Obviously, that's something that Chairman Priebus and President-elect Trump will talk about who the candidates are. Maybe there's somebody from the committee that puts their name out there that they think is a good choice. Maybe Chairman Priebus has some ideas that he wants to share with President-elect Trump. Maybe President-elect Trump has some ideas. But I think, again, I know that a lot of people want to sort of get to the last chapter of the book right now, but we're still at the beginning, phase one of key staff decisions and priorities being laid out.
Sure.
So those discussions will be had in due time, and I think that between Chairman Priebus's tenure, experience, and success here in this building, I know that Mr. Trump is clearly going to look to him to make some suggestions and ideas, whether that's from a pool of existing candidates or somebody that they think would do a really good job in carrying on that legacy to help Republicans up and down the ticket continue to get elected. I think it's interesting when you look at the map and the breadth and depth of this history, you know, from state houses to mayors and city councils. It's pretty amazing how well this party has done and how well we're poised to continue to do.
Yeah, and do you think that was a repudiation against the last 8 years and President Obama's executive orders and the way he behaved with Congress, or do you think it was a repudiation against the media who did not cover everything? What was it? Why such an adamant vote?
Well, I think there's a combination, Maria. One, and the largest part is you have to have a candidate and a message and a movement. And Trump created a movement that I've never seen in my lifetime, and I would guess that most people have never seen and may not again. He really sort of channeled people's desires, visions, frustrations with government in a way that nobody else has ever done it. And he brought that message and that movement to bear. And then I think you combine that with the data and the infrastructure and the ground game that Chairman Priebus built here, and the ability to target voters, know where they are, know when they're going to vote, know how they're going to vote, know what it takes to get them out, who their friends are, the key issues that are important to them. The combination of those two things at the right time created a victory that helped not only the top of the ticket, but all the way down to the lowest levels of people running for office. And so it was a sort of a political tsunami that I don't know that we'll ever see again unless it's going to be in the Trump re-elect.
Yeah, you're right. Sean, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Sean Spicer joining us there. Coming up